Welcome to the Consultant's Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMann and Ransford, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth, and the Consultant's Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Consultant's Way podcast. Anthony Paluska, Dean McMann. Dean, how are you today?
Good. Doing super. Got my hat on. I feel good.
That's good. What is that? Under Armour? Is that right?
It's an Under Armour hat. I have actually been having my head radiated a little bit because I'm so pale. So it's hats for now for a while.
All right. Well, if you're watching it, you got that lovely treat of seeing the light reflect off of your head. But if you're listening, just envision it. It's great.
The glow is pretty incredible. Yeah, I was thinking about doing a show like, the glow of Cro-Magnon or something, just some cool, but no bias.
Yeah, perfect.
I put that out there and there were literally no pickup by NBC, ABC, CNN, nobody.
Well, keep trying.
Keep
trying.
Yeah.
So on a little bit of a more serious note, only a little bit, today on our episode, we're going to be talking to Mike Weiner from Big Time Software. He leads the CPQ team over there, the sales team over there. But we're really going to talk about a topic that is one that comes up all the time with organizations, and that's this tension between sales and delivery that's often caused by what people would typically say is the sales to delivery handoff, which has so many sub-elements to it. It's we can't turn around quotes fast enough. Our offers aren't productized enough. Our delivery team doesn't get involved early enough. And so we have to redo everything. As soon as we sell a deal, we have to feel like we go through the discovery process all over again. All sorts of stuff, Dean. So talk a little bit about kind of your view on sales delivery handoff, the challenges, things you've heard, seen, and then we'll bring Mike in and have him set us all straight on the topic.
Yeah, I think first of all, you've heard me talk about this. I think a little bit is who's got the power in the relationship depending on what your business model is, right? So if your business model is PS is a afterthought, if you will, or all the way to companies that it's kind of equal, and we can talk about the different kinds, although you're a PS company. You're a pure play consulting firm, and the power is on those who deliver. Even though those are all different in how we get the problem, I think the problem persists. And I think the problem persists because sales is very effective at listening for getting a deal. And that does not always round out the information or even the opportunity for PS, right? And that's not a wrong. It's just my job is to close deals on some parameter. My number is primarily product. It doesn't matter, right? So you have this parallel thing going on between, as you said, PS gets involved sometime, right? And by definition, it's poorly defined. I mean, I don't know of a lot of examples where it's not the norm, right? So one thing we always teach.
Yeah, very common.
Yeah, one thing we always teach is plan for replanning. Plan that you're replanning. That has got to be in your methodology. But to your point, which you often talk about, is that's great. That doesn't help the client, right? The client's like, Didn't we just talk about this?
A little bit of replanning is okay and expected, but we shouldn't force them through the entire sales process again by asking them every question about what's going on in their organization. We should understand the reason they're buying, what they're buying, how that actually fits into the overall delivery model, all sorts of things. So, So Mike does a great job here. Mike also has a particular issue with organizations that are heavily reliant on spreadsheets. Instead of saying, hey, guys, technology can solve this problem, so let's use it these days. And it's a great conversation that we have here with Mike, and excited to share it with everybody. So we'll bring him in. Welcome to the show, Mike. We're happy to have you here. If you don't mind, let's kick us off. We'll have introduced you a little bit on the front end of this, but tell the audience a little bit about your background and your current role.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Mike Weiner with Big Time Software. I have spent the last 5 years working specifically with professional services firms, both pure play service companies as well as embedded professional services organizations within software companies, really focusing on reducing the friction of the sales process of services specifically. So everything from that discovery of the client's needs down through scoping, pricing, document generation and approvals, as well as the handoff down to delivery from that sales process. That's where I've spent the last 5 years.
That's great. And we'll spend a lot of time diving into what works well for organizations, what is still broken, and you are trying to inform the market on how to best fix it, all of those things. But tell us a little bit about, before we even dive in, about your current role, about Big Time Software. What are you all doing over there, and how do you fit into that whole sales improvement equation and sales to delivery handoff piece?
Yeah, so currently I am leading the team in the sales effort for our CPQ solutions specifically. So we were acquired by Big Time Software in late 2024 as part of a add-on capability to the core professional services automation platform that is Big Time. You know, at CPQ, we've had a rich history of integrating with PSA and downstream systems, which we'll talk about. But Big Time saw a unique capability of bringing us on to add our functionality to the core PSA platform that they currently serve their clients.
Great. Yeah. So your perspective comes from both, right, working through their PSA, but also just the prior to the acquisition, right? PSA agnostic, and you're able to see organizations of all different shapes and sizes go through the process of trying to improve the front end of their sales the entire sales process, really, and particularly that sales to delivery handoff to make sure everything's runs seamlessly.
Yeah, exactly. And we're still PSA agnostic on the CPQ side. So while we are building an integrated capability within Big Time, we still integrate with other PSAs with our clients today.
Perfect. Well, so let's take this and let's just dive into your area of expertise here. And I'll ask a pretty open-ended question to start us off. What is the biggest point of issue or friction that you see as you look at organizations to work with between the sales to delivery handoff part of the process? So I'll start right there where I feel like there's always the most tension, which is right, sales sells something and then we can't effectively get ready for delivery to have an appropriate kickoff meeting without the client feeling like we just went through all of this, or delivery receives something and they don't know exactly what it is that they're supposed to be delivering on. And that is one of the most common points of frustration. So where do you see that broken the most? And then we'll unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what it comes down to is the fact that these areas are just siloed currently, right? Sales is operating over here, delivery is operating over here, and there's really little collaboration, not because of lack of effort to collaborate, but just lack of integrated tools and using systems instead of spreadsheets that are manual and disconnected, right? So sales ultimately has their process of going through using the CRM to go ahead and move a opportunity through the funnel. But then all of a sudden they're like, I need to add some services to this. So now they need to go down to the delivery team and make sure that the delivery team has all of the information that is necessary. And usually sales doesn't have the correct amount or enough information to gather that from delivery. So sales is like, where's my SOW? And delivery is like, well, I don't know exactly what I'm delivering here. Right. So I think that's one piece, is that there's these sides of the organizations are operating in silos, but also just the lack of connectivity. Right. So again, not being able to have a system to collaborate together using data on the best way to sell a service and the best way to deliver it in tandem. So I see that as being a huge gap in services organizations today.
Mike, do you see that differently across the spectrum of pure play, what we call B2B? We always use that term just to be non-SaaS, like a big company that has a PS organization, IBM, doesn't matter, and SaaS. And I think the problem's there, but it's like the driver of the problem's different, right? Because it's like who's in the driver's seat. In SaaS, clearly sales is always in the driver's seat because we're a product sales company. But as you move across to B2B to pure play, the driver's seat changes, but we still have the problem.
Exactly, right? It's still a disconnect between who's selling the solution and the value to who's ultimately delivering it, right? There's undoubtedly a spreadsheet somewhere that has 1 million tabs and 1 million cells that need to be figured out in terms of pricing out of a solution. So when you talk about pure play services, yes, that's more of a defined spreadsheet, so to speak, but it still takes a lot of effort, a lot of manual time, a lot of back and forth, not only with the customer, but internally to align on, well, what is the service that we're going to be delivering? What's the profitability of that service? What is the margin we're trying to achieve here? What's the document that we ultimately have to generate? So yeah, it's nuanced going from SaaS to services, but the problem is still remains.
Yeah. And part of that is that sales has a number to make, right?
Yep.
And if you get between that and the number, you're and that's why I like the connectivity topic, because you're making it a little more frictionless.
Yeah, and especially on the SaaS side, right? ARR is king, right? So they're willing to almost give away the services or not spend time focusing on the services to maintain and to make sure that the ARR is what ultimately gets generated. While I see that on the SaaS side as being, that's a practice that needs to happen because ARR is the revenue driver, but there still needs to be a profitable and equitable way to involve services to make sure that the customer is ultimately getting the experience that they want to achieve with their software. Because if those critical services aren't attached, they're not going to generate as much value from the platform. And on the pure play services side, when you get that customer on the phone and you have sold the value, to wait 5, 6, 7 days or even weeks or a month to get them an SOW, that is a serious problem in terms of not only lengthening the sales cycle, but we're in a world where things are changing by the hour. So to not be able to deliver upon what has been spoken about in the past quickly, you're really risking the win rate of that particular opportunity.
Yeah, you can't miss out on the momentum associated with a buyer's interest in doing something. And if you need delivery and the PS organization to participate in putting together scoping and quoting and pricing out the professional services portion of the engagement, and that takes too long because either they don't have the time, they don't prioritize it, they're not integrated enough to have all the information, whatever the reason is, it doesn't really matter. If you miss out on that window of opportunity where the buyer is highly motivated to act on something, then it's really difficult to recoup that. And that leads to the tension that exists between sales and delivery, right? As soon as delivery costs sales an opportunity, sales is going to be less likely to get delivery involved with, which only exacerbates the problem. So talk a little bit about, the model that you have seen, and there's probably, and not probably, there are lots of them that work well, but let's talk a little bit about kind of the structure and the model that forces the best integration there. And then we'll talk about the tools that you can use to actually facilitate that. So you have sales organizations that are standalone. You have a sales organization that could be dedicated to professional services that supports the enterprise sales team and the product team. So they know a little bit more, but you still need delivery involved. You have some cases where delivery gets in at the very beginning and starts to sit through the discovery session so that they're in there. So it's less of a handoff and more of a, we're riding passenger in the car that sales is driving. But there's issues there because you're taking your delivery resources away from doing billable work to participate in sales activities. And there's a bunch of in-betweens there. So is there a version of that you think works best, that you've seen kind of the leading organizations that you work with deploy most often? Is there any rhyme or reason there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody is selling their services a little bit differently. And when I say that, I mean the actual nuts and bolts of what they're selling. But that's less relevant. What's relevant is that the entire organization needs to be working off of the same playbook that is informed by data. So using delivery data to inform the decision of what is going into a quote. And everybody's working off a single source of truth in that process, so that everyone is weighing in on the outcome of what this service should look like, how it should be priced, what is the profitability of this particular service offering, so that no one is surprised at all in the process that when they go to deliver a service, it's misscoped, right? That happens so often that a sales will sell an engagement, they'll kick it over to the delivery, and delivery will say, this is completely misscoped, and your margin, timeline, and project financials of that engagement are completely out of line. So to be able to have a single source of truth for the entire organization to work on helps not only make the quote and the delivery accurate, but also reduce the time that's needed for everyone to have to go through that engagement with a fine-tooth comb, and again, lengthen that sales cycle. Everyone should be confident that because they're using this single system, that the quotes are going to be generated correctly. Those quotes are going to be automatically turned into a project creation at the PSA. So no one is going to be surprised because everyone's involved in the creation of this workflow.
All right, so let's take that single source of truth and that single tool there. What's contained in that? What are the different elements to that? What information is, because what's interesting and relevant to the sales organization is often different than the PS organization. So when you're talking about that single source of truth and that single documentation of it, what are we actually putting into that?
What we're putting in is a scientific way to capture scope, price, and documentation. So whether it's fixed fee or time materials, we can talk about that in a second. The pricing and the scope of what we're creating is all derived based on data. So being able to factor in the minute, hour, or the time it takes for a specific deliverable that's being vetted across the organization. So delivery knows and is confident that if this deliverable or this task is in scope for this engagement, the right level of effort and price charged for it is going to be correct. But also, this single system allows for the minimization or removal of errors in the sense of, oh, I missed this in the scope process. I didn't ask this question. I didn't get this level of effort calculated because I'm using a spreadsheet and I can fat finger something, I can miss a field, but being able to have a form that allows the user to be able to come in and make sure that every variable piece of information that is needed to accurately scope, price, and generate the document is accounted for, so that, again, the entire organization is weighing in on making sure that that is completely accurate and the price and the documentation are correct to reflect that.
Mike, I see three big advantages to this right away. One is we're going to be able to find out what we did wrong when we misscoped, right? We're going to be able to ferret those out and minimize them. Two, we're not going to always have all we want to have, and we're going to have to go forward. And therefore, we can scope in an amount of risk that we can now deal with, right? And we can all agree, hey, you're not going to know that, and you don't want to slow down the deal. We're going to put in a 30% risk thing. Yep. And I think the third thing that is equal to those two is we are going to get feedback on whether our numbers are correct in the way we estimate, right? Mm-hmm. because
Yep.
and sometimes we want to estimate things that we want to estimate it down to the gnat that can't be. These can, these can't. And by capturing the data and capturing the communication, capturing the journey, we get better and better and better, both on our side, both as a team, and we force the realization, if we don't know, we're going to have to put some risk money in there.
Yep.
Right?
Contingency percentages, rate uplifts,
Yeah.
anything. Like, for instance, I was speaking to a customer the other day that deals with a lot of municipalities. And every municipality has a different level of red tape that they need to go through. So what we did was provide a workflow to select what is the municipality that you're going to be delivering in, and adding or removing the appropriate time that that municipality generally takes to get their
Sure.
process
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
By
then
categorizing your customer types, you can begin to, but it's all about repetitive good data that makes you better, and taking it off the blackboard, if you will, the whiteboard, and I like that. Also, it's a give and take, right? It
totally.
forces a give and take.
Totally. And then having that connectivity to PSA or downstream project management can inform, okay, this project historically has gone over budget. We need to reallocate the level of effort in the sales process to match what's actually happening in the delivery of this project. And having that continuous improvement to, again, optimize and make the quotes more accurate that go out the door to reflect real actual data that's being delivered.
Yeah, we'd even go to how enabled on these different topics are the team I'm picking, and there's a risk factor on. Oh, I need a manager. I'm going to use a senior, and you can bring into clarity with all that. So we're really a big fan. But you were toe tapping into fixed fee and time and materials. And I'd love to know your feeling on what everybody's doing on that.
Yeah, at a high level, a company should be able to price their services based on what is the likelihood that their customer wants to buy, or how does a customer want to buy? If a customer is more likely to buy using fixed fee, they should have an easy mechanism to create a fixed fee engagement. Or on the conversely, time materials. Now, personally, I feel that fixed fee is becoming more and more prevalent because the risk is obviously less on the buyer and more on the vendor. But because we're creating this scientific way to capture scope, there really is no risk in sending a fixed fee engagement because we're scientifically creating the scope based on data. So I personally feel that fixed fee is becoming more and more prevalent just because of the ease that customers want to buy fixed fee as opposed to time materials. But if a customer wants to buy time materials, you should be able to easily send a engagement based on time and materials as well.
Yeah, I think I think the organizations that we've worked with that struggle the most with this are those that place a high value in the unique expertise that their professional services team has on a specific topic. And as a result of that, they end up over time becoming more and more like custom shops that I can bring in my 2 or 3 experts that know this technology or that know this industry or that know this particular problem. And that person can come in and whip up a quote that de-risks it for my organization. But we know that it doesn't have any of the scientific backing or any of the analytics that would suggest that, okay, did you really de-risk this, or did you just put it in the hands of your most trusted resource on this topic? And so I think everybody would kind of get that. But then let's say that you live in that world today. There's really 2 different objections that I would hear on that, and I'm not out there talking about it as frequently as you, so you might hear more. But one is, okay, gosh, moving down a path like this and being able to do this requires me to do something I know I need to do, but it sounds like a big undertaking, which is productize the different pieces of my service delivery model so that I can break those into buckets so that I can assign a cost to them, and so that downstream somebody can assemble them into a complete quote, which becomes a project plan. That might feel like a really significant undertaking. That's one. And then the second one is related to that, which is, hey, once I do all that, I'm worried that sales isn't going to pull delivery in early enough. They're going to do all of that. It's going to be priced right, but it's actually going to be scoped wrong because they're not going to include things even if they think they know what they're doing, because now it's like they're selecting off of a menu to put a quote together. So I'm sure you get both of those all the time. You might get others. What's your guidance to an organization that's stuck in that everything's custom and I don't want to relinquish control of just putting my trusted expert on the sales team to help sell that deal?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of my favorite things that I hear when I speak to customers is my services are completely complex and custom each and every time for every single customer. But then undoubtedly, when we get into the details, 85% is repeatable in most organizations, right? They just don't know it or they just don't realize it, right? So the aspect of services specifically, and this is what other CPQs have really missed the mark on, is that there is an element of art to configuring and selling services, right? Just by the pure nature. But there has to be a way to bring art and science together. So we look to have a benchmark of the 85% model. 85% of not only the number of quotes that go out the door, but the percentage of the quote themselves is automating 85%. There will always be some cases that will need some custom aspect to a specific service. So we provide that ability, right? Instead of having it in a spreadsheet, make those calculations and those customizations in the system to fine tune that service, create a custom task, create a custom level of effort, add specific roles and resources that are dedicated to those specific custom aspects. But there's still a very big probability that 85% of what they're doing is going to be repeatable and automatable, right? If that's a good word. But knowing the pieces that we can take just completely off of the plate and let's spend time on the actual engagements that need the time, the custom high ticket, big deals. Okay, that's worth your time spending, but still being able to do that in a systematized fashion in an automated way is going to help in terms of bridging that gap. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Yeah. Yeah. So I love the way that you positioned all of that, but all of that does require, right? Okay, let's say that they've accepted that they need to do that. Now actually changing their processes so that they can work there it inevitably requires a bunch of change management. Can you speak a little bit about the role that change management plays in making all of this work and really leveling up the way an organization does its services sales process and that sales to delivery handoff effectively?
Yeah. So there is certainly an aspect of advisory to what we do, right? Because basically in 95% of the cases, we are taking what a customer has in a spreadsheet, right? They have some spreadsheet somewhere that's calculating the price. Usually only one or two people in the organization actually know how to use the spreadsheet, right? So the spreadsheet is key because that is the logic that we're reverse engineering into our system. But the change management is minimal because if we're doing our jobs right, it really should be as intuitive as shopping online or an e-commerce like experience for configuring those variables. If something is out of scope, move it out of the workflow. Delete those questions entirely so that no one has to spend time on going through elements of a service that don't apply to the customer that we're scoping for. But yes, there is a change management aspect of it. So it's working together closely with the subject matter experts that know those fine technical details of their service and putting it into a very intuitive, efficient, easy to use interface of configuring that scope, level of effort, and documentation. So if we're doing our jobs right, it really shouldn't be too tough to make that shift.
Well, Mike, this has been. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. And you've talked about you've mentioned the infamous spreadsheet that all these organizations are working off of a lot of times. Maybe you can make the audience feel a little bit better. Tell us, if you don't mind, the kind of the worst example you've seen of how an organization was doing all this stuff manually. Obviously, you guys came in and could help advise them and help fix it. But let's talk about before they were fixed, and maybe you can make some others that are listening to this feel a little bit better about their current situation. And a spreadsheet that was completely broken, or the entire quoting process, you just had to call some guy that sat in a dark room all day and he would just come up with a number for it. Or do you have any stories like that of just something that you guys sat there and listened to and said, wow, of course we can make such a significant difference in an organization like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one example, I have two examples, but the first one that comes to mind is the example that you just alluded to, right? It's one person that has the knowledge of this particular spreadsheet. So every quote that comes in the door and out the door has to go through a single person, right? And the lead time was like a month. So whether it's a simple service or a complex service, because this queue kept running, it was a month to get a quote out to a particular customer. Right. So once we took out that information from the spreadsheet, these quotes are being generated in minutes. Right. And the first person that we spoke to was this spreadsheet owner. And as you all and everyone listening knows how sensitive people are to their spreadsheets, he quickly understood that we're using the actual data. The hard work that he put into this particular spreadsheet is what's being used to generate the quote and the information. We're just automating it. The other funny story is I had a customer that what they did was they had a spreadsheet. They calculated their level of effort, scope, and price in a spreadsheet here, and they manually copied and pasted it into a document template. So a salesperson would just reuse a document template that they were using. Turns out this person generated an SOW to a North American company. Half the SOW was in German because he didn't realize that the pages underneath were all translated in German for the previous SOW that he generated. So he generated it without looking at it. Half the SOW is in German for a customer, and they lost the deal. So funny story, bad result.
Yeah, short. Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to buy? You want to buy? Hey, listen.
This company did not.
As expected, Mike, you've been super and very informative. Leave us with just a couple of gripping thoughts that everybody can make their life different with tomorrow.
Yeah. I really think that the ability to optimize the pricing methodology is one that's huge, right? Giving you as the vendor the confidence to generate a fixed fee engagement that is brought to light from data, giving you the ability to customize every aspect of it that you need to, but being able to put a fixed fee engagement in front of a customer that is tailored to their needs, to the value that they're looking to achieve, and making sure that you on the delivery side have factored in all of the elements that are needed to deliver that service. Then have a automated integration of that quote, now turning that into an actual project, right? So being able to say, here's the quote, we're going to use that exact data to create the project in PSA or your downstream system so that there is a complete one-to-one relationship between what was scoped, and then what then needs to be delivered, and have the knowledge of the actual data from the quote and the delivery to inform future business decisions. And that's where we're going with AI in the future of saying, hey, what's my most profitable service? What's my service that's going to take the least time to deliver? This company has bought this, and this in the past. What are some other engagements that I should be positioning in front of this client? So it's really starting to take off in the sense of that data, but still being able to bring together the art and science that is required for quoting and selling services.
That's great. Mike, we appreciate you joining us. Appreciate you sharing the knowledge of this whole process. And right, like I kicked this thing off with, there almost every organization that we work with, there's tension between sales and delivery, and some pieces of that handoff are to blame for that. And if there's anything that this conversation can do, or we can do, or you can do to help resolve that, then we're making the PS world a little bit of a better place, because it's tough, right? Sales and delivery have to coexist, and when they do, it's really powerful things can happen. But tension is too often in between those two groups. So I appreciate all the insights here.
No, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, Anthony, bring us home.
Yeah, if you enjoyed this conversation with Mike and you want to hear others like it, like, subscribe, and follow us on our YouTube page, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and you can get the latest episodes every Monday. Also, if you want to get in contact with Dean or myself, you can find us on our LinkedIn pages, or you can always email the show at podcast@consultantsway.com. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.